So I can't afford upsetting my banking partners.
So how do you, if someone calls you, how do you assess whether you even take that meeting? I mean,
oh, we do. We will always love to hear new ideas because I think it's a good learning experience. If anything, is market intelligence, information gathering. Just like big data, we also have small data.
So just to go to you, Janos, for a minute on that. I mean, what King is saying is for someone to pitch an idea to him, they really have to know his business. And so that would mean that person probably needs to come from an asset management background. Right? So is it your experience that more and more startups are done by people who are already in the business, have done this for a while, as opposed to young kids who would say, oh, I have this brilliant idea. I mean, how would you see that?
So it's an interesting question. So arguably when I started Supercharger, I was 20, 26, 27, 29 now. I couldn't go in banking because there was a financial crisis, so I couldn't get a job because of the crisis. And I had to make my own way to build now essentially the world's most successful FinTech accelerator by B2B deals that we've done. I don't have knowledge in finance beyond what I've learned at university, but I was able to bridge it on the back of an amazing mentor and a world-class board that helped me. I think you can get away with that way. Now, clearly an outlier in the sense that the majority, actually all of the FinTech companies that Supercharger has, and so far we have 26, they're all ex-financial professional, or at least, not necessarily financial professional, but at least professional. They're 35, 40, and very successful in their own right before doing the company. So statistically, I think that's where you are. What we shouldn't discount, though, is the value of naivety when it comes to asking questions. Why is it done that way? And if you, very, very simple example, stored value facilities, right? So prepaid cards. There's an assumption that you cannot pay interest on prepaid cards or your e-wallet. Because people think, well, that's actually a banking activity, you cannot pay interest on deposits. Well, actually, there's no issue on that. So you can do it. So now, there's been an academic paper done by my PhD supervisor that showed that in the UK, paying interest on e-wallets or on deposits is not a banking activity, and therefore now all those e-wallets in the UK that are on a prepaid card basis can actually start paying interest. It needed someone to ask a question as to why it has been done that way to unlock essentially a huge amount of potential, because the reason why people don't like prepaid cards, for example, in Hong Kong, is two reasons. You don't get interest on your deposits, and you don't get points or miles accrual or whatever, right? So now we already solved one friction point. Now the question is, how do you do a loyalty program on the back of a prepaid card, which is really not a big issue. So the naivety of asking a question sometimes is good, and sometimes it takes someone external to do it. So that's what I would say we shouldn't discount. However, yes, it's clearly outliers. Young people typically don't do it. The only very successful examples are the guys at Stripe. They were in their 20s, two of them, they built a $1 billion company, but that's one for 100, and that's not what you should be looking at. But by the way, successful entrepreneurs on average are not young, right? So a VC typically puts money in someone that is 35 years old. So you don't have 25-year-old across industries, not just finance, as successful. The average successful age for an entrepreneur is typically when they start to be 35. So I don't think it has anything to do related to finance. It has just to do with you need about 10 years to understand yourself better, to balance yourself, 10 years how to manage people, 10 years how to build a network, 10 years how to know an industry, and then you can actually start building something.
I just want to comment on something what Janos said earlier. I think we also have to be mindful of drawing conclusions just from observation. Like global advisory, for example, works very well in the US. But there are very good reasons for them to be successful, right? For their 401k, which is a defined contribution scheme, and they get tax benefits and all that. And in Hong Kong, we all know it has been very difficult with MPF for trying to get MPF members to make their own investment decisions. That's why the government, the regulators came out with all these default options, right? So I think technology definitely is useful, but also the local characteristics that we need to take into account. That's also another reason why e-commerce is so successful in China, and that cannot be repeated elsewhere, simply because the KYC system is very unique as well.
Well, I think Janos, your comments are very encouraging to people in this room, because I think there are more 35 and above people than 25, so I think that makes us feel good. We're still useful. So I'll ask Fraser the same question, King. I think it's interesting that you kicked off one of your first projects in partnership with Astri, and you're a huge bank, huge IT budget. There must be a lot of startups knocking on your door and say, hey, Fraser, buy my service, right? So how do you deal with that? What do you look for? And what should people be mindful when they're trying to work with you as a partner?
Actually, we won't invest too much resources in the research, the technical and the technology, but we would like to work with the partners, just like Astri. But and also we will also scan through many startups. But how we choose the right company or startup to work with us, I think it is we would like to find out whether they have innovative mind and also innovative business solutions. But one of the key points is, FinTech is moving very fast, so we need to find out a first launch solution. If there is some solution they proposed is a very great solution and first launched in Hong Kong, actually we will first consider this solution. And actually some of the startup, they hit the pain point of our business. If there is some solution, but maybe some of them are not realistic. But if they hit our pain point, maybe, for example, we spend a lot of resources in many works. We need to hire many expertise or professionals to review our credit approval. If we can find a solution, can automate or streamline our credit approval process, maybe it is one of the great solutions for us. I see there is some startup, they are studying on these kind of solutions using big data, AI. I think many startups are studying these solutions. And also we also consider some total solutions. We are not just focused on particular technology. If the solution can cross over different of FinTech elements. For example, it uses blockchain, and also the data may be using big data and AI to facilitate the process. Maybe it is another great business solution for the banking industry. When we consider the DLT solution, we are not just focusing on a single bank or just our bank, streamline our process. We also would like to find out the solution to facilitate the development of Hong Kong. For example, mortgage, trade finance, all of them are very important to the industry, not just banking industry. For example, trade finance, it is related to the maybe insurance, maybe the logistic companies, shipping companies. So the solution is not just limited to the banking. It is what we are looking for in the startup solutions.
So what you're saying is you're open to ideas. Now let me ask the question that people want to ask, but are probably too embarrassed to ask. How do you approach Bank of China? I mean, I don't call the hotline, right? So who do I have an idea, I want to talk to Bank of China. How does that happen? Who do I call?
Actually, Cyberport Science Park is a very good place. We visit Cyberport and Science Parks. There's many startups there. We also walk through some forums so that we can see some new real ideas. I think if there is any good ideas, we can discuss or talk about that in these events. We also set up an innovation center. We will try the new technology in our innovation center, so that we need to do a test whether it is efficient or whether it is useful for our business case.
So, Janos, maybe from your perspective, you were just telling me that you got off the plane from KL where you launched a supercharger there, and you said you did 2 deals in the first couple hours, right? So, part of the role you play, I mean, you do many things for a startup, but one of them is to be a bridge between the startup and banks and asset managers. So, can you share with us that experience, or maybe offer some do's and don'ts for startups who are going that direction?
Sure. So practically, if you're a startup, it would typically take about a year to a year and a half to sell to a bank, like all in from first meeting to sell. And the value proposition that Supercharger has is we typically can bring that down to 3 months, and now we just did it in 5 hours. So that's what we propose to financial institutions and startups. If you're a founder, this really means that, if you have salary, it's a year and a half of salary that we save you, pretty much. Now, the do's and don'ts, I think, what is interesting from having done that now for the last 2-3 years, we know sometimes why certain financial institutions are interested in specific solutions. Regulatory pressure is a very clear driver of, oh yeah, I need to be compliant to MiFID II, let me find a MiFID II company, and then they'll scramble around and they'll get the company, they'll put the cash deal done, and it's a very transparent reason why pain point's happening, they're not ready, they want a solution, they buy the solution, and then that's it. And then there's a whole amount of other fintech companies, they get selected for, you have absolutely no clue why, but it's that one guy in the bank which comes out of the blue and he goes, yeah, I want to do it. And you go, what's the regional deal? So part of it is science, part of it is an art. I think that the issue is not so much who is the contact point in a financial institution. The issue is more what is the financial institution looking at any given time. And I think that's the problem, because you can be, for example, let me give you a practical example. Peer-to-peer lending for SMEs, right? So this was pretty niche 3 years ago, very relevant, and yet amazing company. We had a company funding society, didn't get any traction, and now they're getting a lot of traction with financial institution, even though they're equally as good as a company. But it's just, so the question is not who is the contact point within the bank. The question is what is the bank looking at exactly in the next 6 months? Because anything else, they'll deprioritize it, and the reality is they're not transparent about what they're prioritizing in the next 6 months. They give you broad statements saying, we look at the blockchain, we look at AI, we look at this, but it really means nothing for you as a company, because those are just technologies, they're not applications. I think that's one of the main issues is, ask the bank you're talking to, what are you prioritizing in the next 6 months? And if they're not prioritizing the solution that you have, go to the other bank, because otherwise they'll bring you on the beauty pageant, they'll put 20 of their bankers on their side, and you're going to be pitching, they're going to be pushing the idea, and then you'll see you next year maybe, right? So that's, I would say, what would be the important thing. Just make sure that you are selling the solution that they're prioritizing in the short run.
What the bank need. Actually, we would like to. There are many banks in Hong Kong, but why the customer choose our bank or particular bank, or you choose the bank to be your major bank? Actually, this is the customer experience. Actually, the bank we are thinking many solution or fintech solution to improve the customer experience. Maybe we have some mobile apps, mobile banking, but how to make use of mobile banking? Behind we can put some AI or big data elements inside and improve the customer experience. So I think the customer experience is very important to the bank. Actually, the banking service is very similar between the banks. but how can we make it better between the industry?
Customers' experience and satisfaction is very important. Actually, I don't know whether there's any audience from Citibank, because I'm going to talk about Citibank. Because I learned it from the global CEO for consumer banking early in the year. It really was an eye-opener, because in his talk he said, I have to give up. I kept hiring bright young technicians, IT guys to come and work for the bank. But in the end, they all leave, right? Because they have a good idea, they want to have their own startup. So I tried the M&A, also didn't work. There's a different culture, there are other issues. So in the end, he made a very drastic decision in order to improve customer experience. Because the reason why he wanted to improve on technology was to give their customers the best experience. So what they did was to move from a traditional safe house approach to cloud computing. I was told Citibank is the only bank in the world so far to go and compete through cloud. Moving away from the traditional sort of safe house, meaning everything is in-house, right, to everything open. But the way they're going to provide the service to customers is to do it in partnership with the business partners. So product providers like us, they will allow us to tap on the cloud platform through API. Obviously, we won't have access to their client data, but their clients can draw on our information through the cloud platform. So we don't know who we are providing the information to, but through this open architecture, they can get the best services from all the providers. So I think that during this transition, whether that has been completed, I don't know, but they're already rolling out this kind of service in Asia, country by country. So in the end, I think just to conclude, FinTech is all about in the client experience. Nowadays, customers want instant gratification.
So I want to touch on one more thing before we open up to the floor. And given we're in Hong Kong this space, I want to touch on human capital and continuous learning. That's why we're here. So also in the PwC report, one of the interesting question was asking financial institutions, do you have trouble hiring and retaining people with the right skill set to innovate? And Hong Kong had the highest number of 87, meaning they have trouble. 87% of FIs have trouble. So how do we get the people then? So I'll start with you, Janos. You spoke about Hong Kong U has a FinTech online learning program that they roll out. You're a PhD candidate, so you're closer to the action that certainly I am being on campus. So can you talk a little bit about that? How do we get people to, young people, older people, to catch up with the FinTech knowledge space?
I think there was a terrible joke, right? Which is who made the most money in FinTech in the last 5 years? And then you have someone who said, the guy who's selling ping pong tables to the innovation department of banks. And education is not the same. But here is one of the biggest gap there is, and I think CFA is touching on that, Hong Kong U is touching on that. Hong Kong has a capacity of training, and by training, say qualifying degree, bachelor, certificate, about 200-300 people a year on FinTech. Hong Kong, as an industry, hires 6,000 people minimum a year in finance. If you look at and let's say Hong Kong can double its capacity of training people year on year, so 200, 400, 800,000, 600, etc., etc. It will take Hong Kong 16 years to train enough people so that it has a density of knowledge at what currently London has, and then clear the backlog. 16 years. And I think that the reality is that the only way to be meaningful and have an impact in Hong Kong is, yes, have forums like this where you're going to have 60 people, but this is not the answer for Hong Kong as an economy. That's not the answer for Hong Kong as companies. I mean, if any bank starts working, typically when a bank works with a fintech company, they put 3 full-time resources on it. If you work with 50 companies, you're going to put 150 staff. Now you have, let's say you have 10 banks, that's 1,500 people in Hong Kong. Do you have 1,500 people in Hong Kong trained on fintech? No, you don't. So the question is, how do you go from training 50 people in one room to training 10,000 people in the same time in Hong Kong? And there's only one way, which is you do mass online education course. And that's the only way to do it. So Hong Kong U is going to do that. It's going to be announced during the Hong Kong FinTech Week. Essentially, MIT has another FinTech course in Asia. Oxford has another MIT FinTech course in the US. Oxford in the UK, Europe. And Hong Kong is going to be the largest first online learning course for FinTech in Asia. So that's one way of doing it. The reason why I think it's important is cycles of innovation have been shorter and shorter. The first era of fintech, which was about infrastructure, lasted about 100 years, right? 1860s until 1970s. This was the era of the infrastructure, the government, 100 years long. 1970s, 2007, this scenario was saying is ATM, e-banking, NASDAQ, that's 40 years long. In the current era of fintech, 2007, let's call it 2020 to be nice, that's 13 years. What you start realizing is we go from 100 to 40 to 13, the cycle is getting shorter, and therefore the relevance of your knowledge is getting shorter and shorter. The half-life of knowledge and skills today is 4 years. So you need continuous learning, and the only way for getting continuous learning is be attending workshops like here. But I think all of us in this room, you are highly privileged. The question is more, all the graduates coming out of universities that actually are not even aware of what's happening now. Think about marketing. If I was to do an undergrad degree in marketing, there's no way I wouldn't have a course about digital marketing, social media, Facebook, whatever, right? Now, do an undergrad in banking or finance. Will you have something on fintech? No, you won't. Which, honestly, I think that's one of the most shocking things that government can do and that a country can do, or that an economy can do, is you pouring students through the university system, which by the way is expensive, and yet you're not telling them what is actually the industry looking like. And I think that's what the biggest opportunity in human capital is at Hong Kong U, with the CFA, with Hong Kong SFA, etc., etc. Hong Kong should do this. I think for me, that's the single biggest opportunity in fintech. So let's sell more online learning courses, physical workshop, training courses, because this is what will allow people in Hong Kong to be relevant in 2, 3, 4 years from now.
Totally with you on that. So Fraser, how do you see that from you have a lot of staff, you want to innovate. Now, Janos talked about cycles becoming shorter, but I'm sure that people don't want their career cycles to become shorter. So how do you, one way is partnership. You talk about working with S3, but you still have a lot of people working for you. You want them to upgrade their knowledge. How do you do that in a BOC perspective?
Actually, I got a problem. We have many plans to implement fintech projects, for example, blockchain projects, but I can hardly find any very experienced blockchain programmer or blockchain specialist. Is there any people here with more than 10 years blockchain experience? I don't think so. So how can I get so many experienced people to work for us? So I think I can't find in the market, but I can't find many innovative people from my team or from in our department. They are willing to learn some new technologies. They would like to spend time to study more. So we will charge. Actually, we will recruit somebody from the market with. They are willing to study more innovative technologies, and we will in turn transfer some staffs from other teams because we have the project. We are working with the partners. The partners, they have strong technical backgrounds. So the teammate here in our team can study and on-the-job training in the project. Most of the project is only 3 months or 6 months for FinTech projects. So they grow rapidly in a short periods. So up to now, we have a blockchain team, and some of the people are quite experienced, but still 2 years. But I think it is it is now very experienced people in the market now.
So let's open it up to the floor. We have about 15 minutes of Q&A. King has to run to the airport, so we're going to have to stop at 8:30.